Okay, this is Mario with my microflight. So happy I got my keyboard working again. I just replaced all the rubber contacts there with the original Yamaha, these guys here. I had bought some other ones and I was going to do my own customization upgrade, so I removed all these little nipples from the old ones, and I kept the these little parentheses there, and I made a jig to cut those, and I put those in some other rubber strips that I got, dual ones that also fit here, but they didn't work as well. The rubber was too stiff, so I finally got these. I had them on, and then when I went to turn on the keyboard, it wouldn't turn on. And I think it's because I had to remove these guys here. Let me lower this right here. It's working. You can hear the sound here. Before I wasn't getting any sound, and I had a suspicion it had to do with this board here. This is the amplifier board here. The input, the power comes in here. It goes through a voltage regulator, which sits right there. Takes the 15-16 volt input and converts it to 12 volt to distribute it to the amplifier chips. There's one there. There's another one right there. I think it's in both amplifier sections because they're heatsink. And so this is my mic input here. And so I was I took this out. There was nothing wrong. Originally, the sound was there. All I needed was just to replace the keyboards and a couple pads that I already fixed. And so I took this out so that I can look at the mic input section here. Underneath this board, there's an op amp, a dual op amp, that takes the input of the microphone here. And so my microphone stopped working a while back. And there was some I mean, I could use the mic with an audio input, but I could not get my microphone to work here. My kids used to play with that, and so that happened like a few years after I got the keyboard. I've had the keyboard for many years, more than 10 years, I think. So I took this out to check that out. I took out the dual op amp from there. I removed it from the board. I put it on an op amp tester that I built, and it tested just fine. So I put that back. And then when I went to put this back on the board, there was no sound. And my suspicion was that it was this capacitor here, which I have replaced. This is a 6800 capacitor. I didn't have a 6800, so I put a I believe that's 4000. Yeah, that's a 4700 microfarad 25 volt capacitor. The one that was there was 6800 microfarad, so I'm going to get one from Amazon or to replace that. It is temporary now. It's working, and so I replaced that, and I reconnected all the connectors. One thing I do want to mention here, I'm going to shut this off before I blow anything here because everything's kind of loose, just to test it. And so I want to point out that these connectors here you can remove. You can just pull these out. You can pull these out. You can pull these out. I'm not going to pull them right now. You can pull that out. However, these right here with these gray cables here, with this colored first cable, they don't pull out. You have to remove this little cap here, these caps. And it's a pain in the butt because you have to remove the cap, and then this is how they insert, like that. Okay, and you have to get it precise there, otherwise you risk shorting something out. This is the switch. This goes to the switch. There are 6 lines here. I don't know why they did this. Looking at the PC board from underneath, 3 of them go to one pad, the input pad, and 3 of them go to the other side of the switch. This goes to the switch, which is that board right there. If we follow that wire section, you can see it connects with 6 leads there, and 3 of them go to one pad here, This is where the switch is at. So when you switch it on, it shortens, it shorts these two pads here. But three of those wires are to one pad, three of the other pads. I don't know why they didn't just use one wire. You know, two wires basically, one on each pad here directly to this board here that supplies the 15 volts to that to turn on the rest of the circuitry here. So I don't know why they did this with 6 wires, which is a little bit confusing because I thought these wires went individually somewhere else. After tracing this board, I realized that I noticed that looking at the schematics that this is at end of the PC board, the pads, that this is nothing more than 3 wires to one pad, 3 wires to the other pad, in line with those 3 wires there to one pad, 3 wires to the other pad, and that's what does the switching there. So when you turn on the keyboard, it shorts these 2 wires, which basically shorts those 3 with the other 3, and that's how you get the voltage to connect. It's how you get the power. So it's kind of silly. I don't. Maybe there's a logical explanation. I don't know why they didn't just use one thick wire on each pad. And they use these silly connectors here. Maybe they have an application for some things where you're not going to disconnect it. But if you're going to service the board, I would imagine that they would have wanted these things to be easy to disconnect, just like the other ones. All of the other connectors except for these 2 right here, that one right there and that one right there. This is the one that actually does the connects the amplifier section here to the speakers. Why didn't they just use regular connectors like that? So in the process of taking this out, the wires got a little frayed here. In this case, it doesn't matter because if you short any of these 2, any of these wires, if you shorten, you're just supplying power to the keyboard. In the case of this right here, if you short something, you're going to probably blow an amplifier here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my own connectors here. I have a bunch of connectors that I can use. The other thing is that these connectors have a very, very short distance between the pegs themselves, or the individual pins. And so the connectors that I have, unfortunately, they don't. They're a little bit wider than these, and so I couldn't replace these connectors directly with the connectors that I have for PC boards because they're a little bit wider. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct solder wires to the connectors I have, so that I'm going to have these pigtails that I can connect, a lot easier too, instead of going through the board here. It's a little bit tight here with these connectors. So I am going to do that now that I know that it's working. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and this keyboard should be back in the working operation again. So what to look for when your keyboard does not have sound? Number 1, check the power. Make sure that you're getting 16 volts on the output of the external power supply. That power supply should be sending you 16 volts. Now you can see my power supply. I took it apart because I thought my power supply had issues, but I think it was my capacitor, that main capacitor on the input end of my power and amplifier board, the one that I was just showing you again. Yeah, this one is a 16 volt 2.4 amp. It's a direct Yamaha original power supply. Nothing wrong with the power supply. As I said, I took it apart to see if there was something wrong. There's nothing wrong with this power supply. What was wrong is this capacitor here. It just lost the dielectric. It wasn't bulged up. It was just dried up because it was reading, instead of reading 6,800 microfarad, it was reading about 600 microfarad. And this one is 4,700. It's not the same thing, but it's very close, but it's turning it on. So I am going to leave this until I get the new one. And once I get the new one, I'll remove the board again and change that one to the exact value that it was supposed to be there. But at least it got me going here. So if there's no sound here, check the power supply, number 1. I'm explaining in this video because all the videos that I've seen that I go when on YouTube, a lot of them are useless. Number 1, they don't explain. Number two, some of the videos are not done in English, and you can't you can't understand. You can't even translate them because there's no captions or any explanation in text. So a lot of those videos are useless. There's one gentleman, one young man from I think he's from England. He did a kind of a similar thing with a similar keyboard, much simpler power supply, but he replaced a capacitor and that got the sound back working again. So first thing, when there's no sound, from a logical standpoint, it tells you that number one, check the power, make sure you have power. Number two, make sure that no capacitors are bulged up or blown or show signs of wear. Because I've had this keyboard over 10 years. Capacitors are notorious for drying up, after 10, 15 years. So, and the ones that tend to go are typically the ones at the power input side, the ones that are attached to the power supply, the filter capacitors. So this is I believe this is a filter capacitor. So this one is the one that is supposed to hold the 16, 15 volts to the that also is delivered to the regulator here. The side of the regulator is 15 volts. You have ground at the center lead, and then you have 12 volts at the output of this regulator. It's a 15 to 12 volt regulator, and 12 volts supplies all the rest of the chips, including the op amps that do the monitoring and the signal the signal manipulation, from the microphone input, which is this section right here. This way, this is separated with these dashed lines here. This is the input side, and you have you can put your guitar or any instrument, electric instrument. You can feed it through here, and here's your gain control, and here's your switch for high and low signal. So this also controls the mic, like I said. But if you're going to start, checking your amplifier, I've seen people, replace chips like that. I don't think you need to replace chips like that. I mean, the display works just fine. Everything's showing just fine. It's just no sound. So sound has to do with sound amplification. The input signals that come in through the amplifier and get amplified. So if there's no sound, it's most likely the amplifier, the audio amplifier, and I think this is called an AM module. Or AM is the board that's is its label in the service manual from Yamaha. That you're going to have to go online and look for service manual. If you use a Google search, you'll find that service manual without having to download external software that some sites want you to download. Many of them have I think spyware. So be very careful. You should not have to download anything. You can view this directly online if you use Google search for the service manual of Yamaha for your particular keyboard, and I think it's there. This is for the PSR S910. So I found the manual and I started looking at all the photos. I started downloading the images to my computer, not the files, but the actual images. And the site that I went to is a pretty safe site. So once you have that reference, at least you have a map of what you're looking at, what you're working with, and so this is how I approach this, and I think that's how you should approach it if you have audio issues. First, start looking at your power, number one, then start looking at your see if you're getting. If you're not getting any sound, it's most likely because some of these capacitors or even the amplifiers here, those are it's a little more work to repair that, because you're going to have to disassemble that. You're going to have to disassemble a plate that's underneath this particular one that has a metal plate, and I think they do that to block any interference, as a lot of these grounding strips are done. It's to block any interference from the keyboard, so you don't get any noise. That has to be removed before you can access the bottom of this PC board. And then if it is an amplifier, you're most likely going to have to replace that, remove that from there, and remove this from here. And that's a little more involved. So I am not going to go into that, because this is not what this is about. I don't have to repair that. Hopefully and most likely, check these caps here. the major gaps that are in line with the power supply. Because if these go bad, you're not going to get the voltage, the proper voltage to the rest of the circuitry, and the circuitry is not going to operate if it doesn't have the right voltage. Now the other thing to check is to see if you have 12 volts here on this regulator. Make sure that this regulator is working. The way you test that is you check to see if you're getting 15 volts or 16 volts, whatever you're getting at the input, you should get it at the input of this regulator, and then the regulator regulates it to 12 volts for the rest of the circuitry. So if you're not getting 12 volts here, most likely this regulator is bad. Or if you're not getting 12 volts here, check the input. If you are getting 16 volts here, then this regulator, if it's good, should be able to output 12 volts DC at the output lead, which is this third lead right here. We're looking at the front of the regulator, and so that's how you go about checking this from a very basic reference here, and hopefully you'll have something similar, and that's how you get your sound back, unless you really blew some of the amplifiers. Like I said, if you blew these amplifiers, if you have voltage here and this board, you're not getting sound, still most likely you blew these amplifier chips. Although it is possible that you could have blown something else in here, but this is more complex. As you can see, this is where all the microprocessing starts to happen. I've seen some guys, start, test a couple caps and they replace one of the chips. They don't tell you why they even tested those particular caps and replace one of these chips. It would be nice to have, an explanation why to test this. Check here because of what? Why are you checking that? And replace this because of what? How do you know that you have to replace that? And why are you testing those components there? As I just explained in this video here, this is how you test these things and the reason why. So I hope this video was informative. I wasn't going to do a video this long, but I decided to do it because I'm fed up with a lot of the crappy videos that are put on YouTube, and they don't give you any information. You spend time, looking for these things, hoping that somebody will give you it, and there's nothing. I don't understand that mentality in people posting videos. If you're not going to post videos that are worthwhile, don't post them. Period. This is Mario with MI Microflight. Any comments, put them below. Hopefully I'll read them and give you an answer back.